So I decided as far as the review went that I was just going to record it right after I went over the notes. I did the review. We'll go over the topics on the review and go through sliding filament theory one more time through that. I think that some of these questions in the review will be helpful for your test. You got a quiz coming up. You got a test eventually. Let's go over this before we talk quickly about energy for contraction. It's a short topic, so we can go through these. Please let me know if you have any questions, email, stop in office hours, whatnot. Muscle contraction begins with a nerve impulse. You could say a signal from the brain. You could say begins with the motor neuron. Any way you want to say it. I'm not really picky about your wording on that, but know that your brain's got to start it and the impulse comes down a nerve. Acetylcholine is important. You'll need to know that it's either acetylcholine or ACH. I'd probably type both. You'll see acetylcholine and ACH. And that's not one of those words where I would give you another word that looked kind of like it and make you decide. Like acetylcholinase. I won't do that. If I'm looking for the neurotransmitter, it will be that word, not one kind of like it. Your neurotransmitter is received, you could say, simply by the muscle. If you wanted the location, it's the motor end plate, which is part of your neuromuscular junction. So any of those were good. You need to know this. The muscle impulse releases calcium. You could say calcium or Ca2+. That's a chem thing. I don't care. If you write just Ca and talk about an ion, I know what you mean. The protein that binds with this ion, you might be tempted to say another one. Troponin is the one that binds to calcium. Actin only wants to do with myosin. Actin and myosin are exclusive. They only bind to each other. So the protein exposed for binding with this calcium is actin. It forms its cross bridge with myosin. Myosin is the one that bends. Actin is like my old dog. She was really round. Like sausage round. You guys saw my dog now. The old dog was bigger. She sat like a toddler, and I always said she was like actin. She was so round that she couldn't move well. Actin is round. That's its job. Myosin is the mobile molecule. Actin's too round to move well. So it's always going to be myosin that bends. The cross bridge is actin to myosin, with myosin being the puller. This goes on until your brain's like, nah, put that arm down, you sit down, stop the muscle contraction. Your brain signals. Basically, it signals by not signaling. When your brain stops sending the signal for a muscle contraction, contraction stops. It's no longer needed. However you said that for what makes the cross bridge release, you just got to know that your brain says, we're done. The enzyme that breaks down the acetylcholine to end contraction is acetylcholinesterase. I just thought that was cool because to show you the ASE ending for an enzyme, will you need that on an exam? No. Calcium goes home to the sarcoplasmic reticulum to wait for next time, and the muscle fiber relaxes. That's my summary of the sliding filament theory, and we can go over it again later on, but we're on to the idea of energy. Muscles need energy. We talked about ATP and where it comes from. Now, you might think, okay, we're just consistently remaking ATP, and that's nice, but your body needs help. ATP doesn't magically appear out of the air. At first, when you're using energy, ATP breaks down nicely to ADP. The end. And that's great. Like right now, I'm chilling in my chair. It's before breakfast. I'll get something to eat. I'll use the food for energy when I get there. I'm good. But when I go out running later, I'm probably going to need more energy than I do right now. I'm planning on running a little faster than I'm moving at this exact moment, chilling in my chair. Energy has to come from somewhere, and ATP needs help to be remade. It needs something to get that phosphate group from, because if you go from ADP, the phosphate group has to come from somewhere, and there it is, creatine phosphate. That is creatine. If you know about muscle building and supplements, it is the same creatine. And if you don't take it, even if you do take it, your body is still able to make this molecule naturally. If you look at your picture, on the right is the phosphate group with your PO3. One of the oxygens was taken off to make the bond to nitrogen there. So if you're a stickler on PO4 minus 3, the other one left to make that bond. So this is your energy storage molecule in muscle. It is in all of our muscles, whether we supplement creatine or not. It's natural, And that's why a lot of people, and again, I'm talking over the age of 18. I'm not saying grab up your baby brother who's 11 and start giving him creatine and see what you can do with him. You guys, as high school students, are even younger than the recommended age. So I'm going to be talking about creatine supplementation in adults. So don't think that I'm not recommending this. It's not my job as an adult to do that. But I am going to talk about creatine supplementation and why people do it. Is there value? Right now, for most of us, there is not. Because creatine levels in the body are fine for normal activity. I don't want to sprint. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. When we look at creatine in general, your liver makes it and blood carries it to your muscles. So right now, your muscles have creatine, the molecules are remaking your ATP. You're doing great. Most of us don't regularly undertake exercise that requires extra ATP. You might do it once in a while, but if you are a sprinter, if you are a power lifter, if you're lifting for mass gain, if you're lifting for strength gain, people will supplement creatine phosphate. And if that is you, and again, I'm not talking underage supplementation, that ain't my job, but for adults, and I took this as a college course, so the professor just sort of blasted it out there because we were 18 and over. Creatine supplementation can raise the creatine levels to a certain extent in muscle. When creatine runs out, energy runs out. If you don't know about supplementation with creatine, it's recommended for, again, sprinting, powerlifting, and strenuous bursts of activity. For me as a distance runner, it's not going to do me any good. It will not do me any good because of the type of metabolism used. But for a sprinter, say, somebody who's running the 100-meter dash, they rapidly use ATP in anaerobic respiration and need to remake it again as quickly as possible if they're running multiple events at track that day. If you're trying to lift for strength, you use up your ATP very rapidly in a power lift, in a heavy lift, and you need to remake it quickly to be able to go again. Taking creatine in these situations and following the dosing recommendations on the packet, it is for real. Like how you're supposed to take it is the healthy way to take it. It can give you more ATP in those situations by resupplying phosphate more quickly. Here's a little don't from somebody I used to work with at the golf course. And one summer he decided he wanted to be swole. He's about my size. So not like 5'1", not like 90 pounds, but not a big dude. Not a big dude at all. Some muscle, definitely athletic, definitely thin and muscular. He wanted to be swole for his girl. So his idea was, if one dose of creatine is good, 3 a day is better. First of all, wrong. Hey, read the packet, follow the directions. Secondly, you're supposed to cycle creatine, take and then not take. Well, if taking it is good, taking more of it is better, so we won't cycle. We're just going to keep taking it. Wrong. One of the things with creatine is you need to be hydrated because it pulls water to your muscles. In addition to size gains from lifting, you'll also see some size gains with muscles because your muscles will retain water along with your creatine. So he did that correctly. He was drinking plenty of water, but he said, well, I want to look cut too, so I can't eat. I'm just going to drink a lot of water and take creatine. I figure I can go on 800 calories a day. I go home and work out after the golf course. We would do 8 hours of manual labor at the golf course, and he would go home and work out on 800 calories a day and 3 doses of creatine. So he could look swole for his girl. Here's the problem. If you're building muscle, if you want to build muscle, you need nutrients as in food to build the muscles. So let me tell you everything that he did wrong in that. If when you are 18, you decide you do want to use creatine, follow the directions, cycle, take the dose recommended, make sure you eat, make sure you stay healthy. And if you're like, well, I'm not going to train, I'm just going to take creatine, you're missing the point. It's a training aid. The gains in muscle size you're making if you're taking it and not working out is literally swole, like poofy muscles from water. So the recommendations come from the remaking of ATP. I had a professor in my master's degree say to us as a class, I no one should sprint without using creatine. I was like, okay, no, I would never say that to athletes, even adult athletes. It's not like that. I would also not say no one should ever take it. It's a personal decision for adult athletes as far as training goes for lifting and sprinting. Follow your directions. It's safe if taken correctly. And that's my big warning on creatine in terms of supplementation is just make sure you're following directions. I'm middle ground on it. I've never tried it. It's never been a thing that I need because I'm not a big weightlifter or a sprinter. So that's my thoughts on it. Again, you already got some. So it's remaking your ATP right now.